Her boyfriend is my financial advisor, and they are both draining my accounts. I swear to God, if you're listening to this, if you're reading these words, please, for the love of all that's holy, hit that subscribe button. And while you're there, give it a like. Share it with anyone you think might need to hear this, and leave a comment. Seriously, your engagement means the world, and it helps get these stories out there. I'm not doing this for attention, not really. I'm doing this because, well, you'll see. And maybe, just maybe, my messed up story can save someone else a world of pain. The smell of stale coffee and desperation hung in the air like a cheap perfume. That was my office, my little corner of hell. Not a corner office, not even a cubicle, just a desk crammed into the back of a co-working space that smelled faintly of lemon polish and regret. My life had become a curated collection of disappointments, each one meticulously cataloged and filed away like the bills I couldn't quite pay. It started subtly, like a whisper in a crowded room. Sarah. She was everything. Or at least that's what I told myself. The way she'd laugh, a full-bodied sound that could cut through the noise of any bad day. The way she'd look at me, like I was the only damn thing that mattered. We'd met at that awful open mic night downtown, the one with the sticky floors and the aspiring poets who all sounded like they were gargling gravel. She was there, nursing a gin and tonic, looking bored and beautiful. I, naturally, was trying to impress her with my amateur harmonica skills. It was a disaster, a musical train wreck, but she'd stayed. She'd even clapped. And that, I guess, was the beginning of the end. We built a life, or what passed for one in this city of transient dreams and crushing rent. My job was fine. It paid the bills, mostly. It allowed for the occasional takeout, the monthly splurge on a decent bottle of wine. Sarah, on the other hand, was all about the hustle. Always had some new scheme, some brilliant idea that was going to make us rich. "It's not about the money, babe," she'd say, her eyes sparkling with an almost manic energy. "It's about the vision, the art of it." I loved that about her, that fire. It made my own quiet existence feel less beige. We'd talk for hours, curled up on our worn-out couch, her head on my chest, me tracing the lines of her hand. We talked about the future, the one where we owned a little house with a garden, the one where we could travel, where I wouldn't have to stare at my bank account with a knot in my stomach every Sunday night. Then there was Mark. Mark was my financial advisor. The guy was supposed to be my knight in shining armor, the guardian of my meager savings, the architect of my future prosperity. He'd come highly recommended, a slick operator with a silver tongue and a smile that could charm the paint off a wall. He was young, too, maybe a few years older than me. Sharp suit, expensive watch, the whole package. He made me feel smart. He'd sit across from me in his sterile, glass-walled office, pointing at charts and graphs, explaining complex financial jargon in terms I could actually understand. He'd reassure me, tell me my portfolio was solid, that we were on the right track. "You're in a good position," he'd say, a confident nod. "Just a little patience, and we'll see some real growth." And I believed him. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. The first time I saw them together, it was a blur, a fleeting glimpse. I was picking up Sarah from some late-night art opening. She always had some exclusive event to attend, some networking opportunity. I pulled up to this swanky gallery downtown, all polished concrete and abstract sculptures. I saw her laughing, her head thrown back, her arm draped casually around him, Mark, my financial advisor. They were standing a little too close, their bodies angled towards each other in a way that felt intimate. My gut did this weird, unpleasant lurch. I told myself it was nothing. They probably knew each other from some industry thing. He was probably networking, just like Sarah. I honked the horn, and she turned, that brilliant smile flitting across her face. But there was a fraction of a second, a flicker in her eyes that felt off. She waved me over, introduced him as Mark, a friend from the financial world. Friend. Right. The unease started to fester. Small things. Sarah would be on her phone, her thumb flying across the screen, a secretive smile playing on her lips. When I'd ask who she was talking to, she'd say, "Oh, just work stuff," or "a client." She started staying out later. "Networking events," she'd claim, her voice a little too bright. "You know how it is, babe." I did know how it was. I knew the hustle. But this felt different. the excuses, the evasiveness, and then there were the unexplained expenses. Little things at first. A charge for a nice dinner I hadn't been to. A purchase from a boutique I'd never heard of. "Oh, that was a gift for my sister," she'd say. Or a necessary work expense, "I'll show you the receipt later." The receipts never materialized. I started looking at our joint bank account. I know. Trust. It's the bedrock of any relationship. But this gnawing suspicion, it was like a parasite, slowly eating away at my peace of mind. Mark had access to my accounts, of course. That was his job. He was supposed to be managing my investments, helping me grow my wealth. But I started noticing withdrawals. Small at first, then larger. Significant chunks of money disappearing without any explanation. When I brought it up with Mark, he'd brush it off. "Market fluctuations," he'd say, or "strategic rebalancing." He'd show me these complex spreadsheets full of numbers that seemed to swim before my eyes and assure me everything was under control.
Don't worry about the day-to-day. I'm handling the long game for you. The long game. It felt like the short game, and I was losing. Sarah's behavior became more erratic. She'd be clingy one minute, distant the next. She'd shower me with affection, then suddenly pick a fight over something trivial, her eyes blazing with an anger that felt disproportionate, misplaced. I tried talking to her. "Are we okay?" I'd ask, my voice barely a whisper. "Is something wrong?" She'd always deny it, turn it back on me. "You're just stressed about money," she'd say, or "You're imagining things." Her words were a balm, a temporary fix, but the rot had already set in. I'd lie awake at night, the hum of the city a lullaby of my anxieties, replaying every conversation, every glance, every unexplained charge. One night, I decided to confront Sarah. It was late. She'd come home smelling of a perfume I didn't recognize, her eyes a little too bright, a flush on her cheeks. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice tight. She hesitated, just for a beat, but it was enough. "Just out with friends," she said, her gaze flicking away. "Networking." She started to walk past me, towards the bedroom. I grabbed her arm, gently but firmly. "Sarah, we need to talk." She pulled away, her jaw tight. "I'm tired, Alex. Can we do this tomorrow?" Her tone was dismissive, cold. That's when I saw it, peeking out from the pocket of her jacket draped over a chair. A small, embossed card. Mark's card. The one he'd given me for his firm. Except, on the back, scrawled in Sarah's familiar, elegant script, were two words. "My Mark." My blood ran cold. The world tilted. "My Mark," I echoed, my voice hollow. Sarah froze, her eyes widening in panic. She snatched the card, her hand trembling. "It's nothing," she stammered, her usual composure crumbling. "He's just a friend, a good friend." But the way she said it, the desperation in her voice, was a confession in itself. The slick financial advisor, the evasive girlfriend, the disappearing money. It all clicked into place, a hideous, painful mosaic. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, hot and sickening. I stumbled back, my hands going to my head. "A good friend?" I repeated, the words laced with a bitterness that tasted like ash. "The guy you met at that gallery? The guy who's supposed to be managing my money? The guy whose card has my Mark written on the back?" She flinched, her face pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. The silence in the apartment stretched, thick and suffocating, broken only by the distant wail of a siren. I looked at her, at the woman I thought I knew, the woman I loved, and saw a stranger, a thief, a liar, and the man I'd trusted with my financial future. He was part of it, part of this betrayal. The walls of my carefully constructed reality were crumbling, and I was standing in the wreckage. I felt a tremor run through me, a mixture of rage and despair so potent it threatened to shatter me. "How much, Sarah?" I choked out, my voice raw. "How much have you taken? How much has he taken?" She just stared at me, her eyes filled with a dawning horror, as if she too were just realizing the full extent of the mess they had made. The air crackled with unspoken accusations, with the death of trust. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone,
that this was just the beginning of the unraveling. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. It was the sound of everything I'd believed in shattering into a million sharp, unforgiving pieces. Sarah stood there, a ghost in her own life, her carefully constructed facade dissolving like sugar in rain. Her breath hitched, a tiny, pathetic sound in the vast emptiness that had suddenly opened between us. I watched her, my chest tight, my vision blurring with a potent cocktail of fury and disbelief. My mark. The words hammered in my skull, each syllable a fresh wound. You and Mark, I managed to ask, the words scratching at my throat. It wasn't a question, not really. It was an accusation, a desperate plea for it all to be a horrible mistake. She finally looked at me, her eyes wide and glistening, but I couldn't tell if it was guilt or fear, or maybe both. Alex, it's complicated. Complicated? I laughed, a dry, rasping sound that held no humor. Complicated is deciding between pizza or Thai. Complicated is not complicated like my girlfriend is sleeping with my financial advisor and they're both bleeding me dry. The last part, the money, the betrayal intertwined, was the bitterest pill to swallow. It wasn't just about love, it was about my security, my future, all of it being systematically dismantled. She wrung her hands, her gaze darting around the room as if searching for an escape route. It's not like that, not entirely. Not entirely. I stepped closer, my voice rising, no longer able to contain the earthquake rumbling inside me. What the hell does not entirely mean, Sarah? Does it mean you've been dipping into my accounts with him? Does it mean all those late nights networking were spent with him? I could feel the tremor in my hands, the clenching of my jaw. I felt like I was unraveling thread by thread. Her shoulders slumped. We needed the money, Alex. Things got tight. Things got tight, my voice cracked. Your things got tight. Because last I checked, we were in this together. We were saving for a house. We were planning a future. And who was helping us with that? He was. My financial advisor, the man I trusted with every penny I had. And you were, what? Giving him my money as a retainer for his services. The absurdity of it, the sheer audacity, was almost too much to process. Tears began to stream down her face, carving paths through the carefully applying makeup. It started small. He said he could help.
With some investments, and then it just snowballed. Snowballed? I paced the small living room, the worn rug feeling inadequate beneath my restless feet. Snowballed into what, Sarah? Into you buying expensive perfume I've never smelled before? Into you going to fancy galleries I've never heard of? Snowballed into you telling me lies for months on end? My mind erased, replaying every suspicious glance, every evasive answer. I saw Mark's face, his smooth, confident smile, and a wave of bile rose in my throat. He hadn't just been managing my money, he'd been strategizing how to steal it, with Sarah as his willing accomplice. Alex, please, you have to believe me, she whispered, her voice choked with sobs. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. A mistake? I stopped pacing and stood directly in front of her, my eyes boring into hers. The love I'd felt, the adoration, had curdled into something dark and toxic. This wasn't a mistake, Sarah. This was a plan, a calculated betrayal. You looked me in the eye day after day and you lied. And he took advantage of my trust, of my belief in him. Did you ever think about me? About what this would do to me? She shook her head, tears spilling faster. Of course I did. I was so ashamed, so scared. He told me, he said he could fix it, that he could make it all go away. Make it go away? I felt a dangerous heat building inside me. By taking more? By digging us deeper into a hole? Sarah, how much? How much is gone? She looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Her silence was an answer in itself, a damning confession. The air thickened, charged with the weight of her unspoken words. I remembered a recent conversation with Mark, a casual check-in. He'd mentioned needing to liquidate some assets for a necessary diversification strategy. I'd nodded, trusting him implicitly. Now, the words tasted like poison. He managed the process, she mumbled, her voice barely audible. He made it look like normal portfolio adjustments. Normal portfolio adjustments? I threw my hands up in disbelief. You mean he was actively stealing from me and you were helping him? You were his inside woman, my own girlfriend. The words were brutal, the truth a physical blow. I could feel the foundations of my life crumbling. The dreams of that little house, the garden, the travel, they were all evaporating, replaced by the cold, hard reality of debt and deception. Alex, I love you, she pleaded, reaching out a trembling hand. I flinched away as if she touched me with fire. Don't, I spat, the words sharp and final. Don't you dare say that. Not now, not after this. I thought I knew you. I thought we had something real. But this is a nightmare, and you're right in the middle of it, and so am I. I turned away from her, needing space, needing air. I walked towards the door, my legs feeling heavy, disconnected from my body. I needed to think.
I needed to figure out what the hell to do next. The betrayal was a gaping wound, raw and bleeding. Mark. That smooth, unctuous Mark with his expensive suits and his reassuring pronouncements. He'd played me like a fiddle, and Sarah had been his conductor. I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door. "Where are you going?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with panic. "To see Mark," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "I need to have a normal portfolio adjustment discussion with him, one that doesn't involve spreadsheets." Her eyes widened in alarm. "No, Alex, you can't. He'll just deny everything. He's good at that." "Oh, he's good at a lot of things, apparently," I said, my hand on the doorknob. "But I have a feeling he's not as good at lying to my face when I'm standing right there, looking him in the eye." I opened the door and stepped out into the cool night air, leaving Sarah standing in the wreckage of our relationship, the echo of her broken sobs fading behind me. The city lights blurred as I walked towards my car, a primal rage building within me. I wasn't just losing money, I was losing my trust, my love, my entire sense of reality. And Mark, the architect of this destruction, was about to face the consequences. The drive to his office was a blur of adrenaline and grim determination. I knew I had to be smart, but right now, all I felt was the burning need for answers and for retribution. I arrived at his upscale office building. The late hour meant security was minimal. I managed to talk my way past the night guard, a flimsy story about an urgent, forgotten document. He buzzed me up to Mark's floor, the elevator ascending with unnerving speed. The hallway was dimly lit, hushed, and empty. Mark's nameplate, gleaming brass on a dark wood door, seemed to mock me. I didn't knock. I didn't wait. I turned the handle and walked in. The office was exactly as I remembered it, sleek, modern, sterile. A large glass desk dominated the space, papers neatly stacked, a high-end computer monitor glowing softly. Mark wasn't there. The office was empty, bathed in the cool artificial light. A sinking feeling replaced the rage. Had Sarah warned him? Had they planned this? Had they anticipated my reaction? I scanned the room, my eyes landing on his desk. And then I saw it, a small, discreet folder peeking out from under a stack of financial reports. Curiosity overriding caution, I reached for it. It wasn't a financial report. It was a personal journal, a leather-bound notebook, the kind you'd buy at a nice stationery store. My heart hammered against my ribs. This felt like crossing a line, a huge one, but the gnawing suspicion, the desperate need to understand, propelled me forward. I opened it. The handwriting was unmistakably Mark's, neat and precise. The first few pages were filled with typical financial musings, market analysis, client notes. But then the tone shifted. It became personal. And then I saw Sarah's name. Not just mentioned, but discussed in detail. Entries detailing their meetings, their growing closeness, their secret rendezvous. Dates, times, places. It was a sickening chronology of their affair, laid bare in black and white. My hands trembled as I turned the pages, each entry a fresh stab of pain. He wrote about her spark, her ambition, how she understood the game. He described her as his partner in crime, his inspiration. Then I found it. An entry dated about 6 months ago. Sarah's idea is brilliant. The husband is so trusting, so naive. He's putting all his eggs in my basket, and with Sarah's cooperation, we'll make sure those eggs hatch into our own nest egg. We just need to be strategic. A few carefully managed losses here, a few unforeseen expenses there. He'll never suspect. He's too blinded by her and by his own optimism. My breath caught in my throat. My optimism, my trust. He saw it as a weakness, a tool to exploit. He wasn't just stealing my money, he was taunting me with it, using my own naive belief as a weapon. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't just about Sarah's fleeting indiscretion. This was a calculated long-term scheme. Mark had been systematically defrauding me from the beginning, using my relationship with Sarah as the perfect cover. I flipped further, my eyes scanning for the extent of the damage. He detailed transactions, transfers to offshore accounts, payments to various shell companies. The numbers were astronomical, far exceeding anything I could have imagined. My entire savings, my retirement fund, the money I'd worked so hard for, the money I'd hoped would secure my future, had been siphoned off, piece by agonizing piece. Suddenly, the office door creaked open. I slammed the journal shut, my heart leaping into my throat. I scrambled to place it back under the reports, my movements jerky and panicked. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the dim hallway light, was Mark. He looked surprised, then his expression hardened into something cold and dangerous. He hadn't expected me. "Alex, what are you doing here?" His voice was smooth, practiced, but I could detect a tremor of unease beneath the practiced calm. I stood up, my body rigid. I met his gaze, the anger that had been simmering beneath the surface now burning with a fierce, unwavering intensity. I held his eyes, letting him see the storm brewing within me. I had nothing to hide. He had everything to lose. "I think," I began, my voice low and steady, but laced with a dangerous edge, "that we need to talk about your strategic diversification, and maybe about Sarah, and about how you've been playing me for a fool." His eyes flickered, a barely perceptible shift that spoke volumes. He took a step into the office, closing the door softly behind him. The air crackled with unspoken threats and accusations. He knew I knew. The game was up. But the question was, what would he do next?
And more importantly, what would I do? The journal was still on his desk, the incriminating entries burning in my mind. I had found proof, undeniable evidence of his treachery. But getting out of this office and out of this situation was going to be the real challenge. He smiled, a chilling, predatory smile that sent a shiver down my spine. "Alex," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, "I think you've stumbled into something far bigger than you realize." The air in the office thickened, a tangible pressure that squeezed the breath from my lungs. Mark's smile was a predator's rictus, devoid of warmth, dripping with a confidence that just moments ago I would have found reassuring. Now, it was a promise of pain. He took another step, and the faint scent of his expensive cologne, once a comforting marker of success, now felt like a cloying, suffocating shroud. I didn't retreat. I couldn't. The rage, the betrayal, the sheer, unadulterated wrongness of it all had rooted me to the spot. The journal, that damning, leather-bound testament to his depravity, lay between us, a silent, irrefutable witness. "Bigger than I realize?" I echoed, my voice a low growl that surprised even myself. I felt a strange detachment, as if I were watching this scene unfold from a distance, a spectator to my own destruction. But the tremor in my hands, the drumming in my chest, told me I was very much alive and very much in danger. "You mean bigger than my girlfriend sleeping with my financial advisor and conspiring to steal every dollar I've ever worked for?" I let out a short, harsh laugh. "Mark, I think I've got a pretty good handle on just how big this is." He tilted his head, his eyes, usually so warm and engaging, now sharp and calculating. You think it's that simple? A little affair? A little mismanagement of funds? Alex, you've been so caught up in your own narrative, you've missed the forest for the trees. He gestured vaguely with one hand, encompassing the expensive art on the walls, the panoramic view of the city lights twinkling like scattered diamonds. This is a business, a complex one. And sometimes, to make the big moves, you have to take calculated risks. Calculated risks? My voice rose, the carefully constructed calm shattering. You mean stealing from me, from us? You mean using Sarah, my Sarah, as your puppet? Was that part of the calculation, Mark? Her desperation? Her willingness to betray me for a taste of your success? The words ripped from my throat, raw and ragged. The image of Sarah's tear-streaked face, her plea that she loved me, flashed through my mind, a sickening juxtaposition against the stark, cold truth of the journal. Mark's expression didn't change. He remained infuriatingly composed. Sarah is resourceful, and she understands the pressures of the world far better than you do, Alex. She saw an opportunity to secure her future, and frankly, so did I.
He walked around his desk, his movements unhurried, deliberate. He picked up a sleek silver letter opener from the polished surface, turning it over and over in his fingers. It glinted under the office lights, a small, sharp piece of metal that suddenly felt like a threat. "And what about my future, Mark?" I demanded, my gaze locked on his. "Did you ever factor that into your grand design? Or was I just a convenient piggy bank, an endless supply of capital for your ambitious schemes?" I took a step forward, my own hands clenching into fists. The journal was still there, a constant, tangible reminder of his deceit, but I knew I couldn't rely on it alone. I needed something more. I needed to see him break. He chuckled, a dry, unpleasant sound. "Your future is secure, Alex, as long as you continue to be cooperative. We've been very careful, very thorough. The money is distributed through layers of holdings, untraceable. Most of it, anyway." He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. "And Sarah, well, she's been very helpful in ensuring there are no loose ends." No loose ends. The phrase echoed in the silence, chilling me to the bone. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about silencing me, about ensuring I could never expose him. "What have you done to her, Mark?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. He shrugged, a casual gesture that made my stomach churn. "Nothing you haven't already done, in a way. You pushed her away with your naivete, your blind trust. I simply offered an alternative, a more pragmatic approach to life." He walked towards the large windows, gazing out at the city. "You see, Alex, the world isn't built on dreams and promises. It's built on power, on leverage, and I have a great deal of both." "Leverage?" I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "You think you have leverage over me? I have the proof right here." I pointed to the journal on his desk, my voice gaining a new strength, a surge of adrenaline. "This tells the whole story, Mark. Your little plan, your confession, it's all in there. And when this comes out, your power will evaporate faster than you can say insider trading." He turned back from the window, his smile gone, replaced by a hard, flinty gaze. "You think I haven't accounted for that? You think I'm stupid, Alex?" He took a slow, deliberate step towards the desk, his eyes never leaving mine. "That journal is a convenient fiction, a placeholder. The real proof, the actual transactions, are encrypted, secured. And if anything happens to me, or if you try to go public with that little book, those accounts will be wiped clean, every last penny. And Sarah will face the consequences alone. A very unpleasant set of consequences, I assure you." My blood ran cold. He had thought of everything. He had woven a web so intricate, so suffocating, that I was trapped within it. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I was not in control.
I was a pawn in his twisted game, and the stakes were higher than I could have ever imagined. Sarah, the thought of her facing anything terrible because of my actions, because of this mess, was unbearable. "You're a monster, Mark," I whispered, the accusation laced with a despair I couldn't mask. I'm a businessman, Alex, he corrected smoothly, picking up the letter opener again. And you, my friend, have become an inconvenient liability. He walked towards me now, slowly, deliberately, the letter opener held loosely in his hand, a casual threat. You have a choice. You can walk out of here, pretend this never happened, and we can all move on. I'll even make sure you get a substantial portion of your money back, enough to start over. Or you can try to be a hero and suffer the consequences for yourself and for Sarah. My mind raced, a desperate scramble for an escape, a solution. Walk away? Live with the knowledge that he had gotten away with it, that he had destroyed my life and had potentially ruined Sarah's? The thought was repugnant. But the alternative, the thought of him hurting Sarah or of me ending up in jail for some desperate, ill-conceived act, was equally terrifying. I looked at the journal, then at Mark. His eyes held a chilling resolve. He wasn't bluffing. I knew that now. He had played me, played Sarah, played the system, and he was ready to play dirty to keep it all hidden. The anger that had fueled me for hours began to recede, replaced by a cold, hard knot of fear and resignation. He had orchestrated this so perfectly. He had turned my trust, my love, my very life into a weapon against me. So, that's it? I asked, my voice hollow. You just get away with it? I lose everything and you get to keep it all? He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. That's the reality, Alex. You were too trusting, too naive. You let your emotions cloud your judgment. And I simply capitalized on your weaknesses. He took another step closer, the letter opener glinting. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a great deal of actual work to do. The kind that involves making money, not losing it through sentimental attachments. My gaze fell back to the journal. The words on the page, Mark's words, were still seared into my memory. The betrayal was a physical ache, a hollowness in my chest. But beneath the pain, a flicker of something else began to stir. Not hope, not exactly. More like a quiet, grim resolve. He thought he had me. He thought he had won, but he had underestimated the depth of my despair and the lengths to which a broken man would go. You know, I said, my voice barely a whisper, forcing myself to maintain eye contact, to project a calm I didn't feel. But you're right about one thing. This isn't the end of the story. He frowned, a flicker of suspicion crossing his face. What are you talking about? I took a step back, moving towards the door, my eyes still fixed on him. I kept my voice level, my movements slow. I'm talking about the fact that you're so arrogant, Mark, so sure of yourself. You think you've covered all your bases, but you missed one. I reached for the doorknob. You forgot about the fact that I'm not the only one who knows what you've done. His eyes narrowed. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything, I said, my hand on the cool metal of the doorknob. I'm stating a fact. I came here tonight not just to confront you, but to gather some final thoughts. And I made sure that if something happened to me, or if I didn't check in by a certain time, certain people would receive a package containing everything, including a copy of that journal. A shadow of genuine alarm crossed his face. He took a step forward, his grip tightening on the letter opener. You're bluffing. Am I? I smiled, a thin, humorless curve of my lips. You'll find out soon enough, won't you? Because I'm not going to let you walk away from this. Not after everything. Not after Sarah. The mention of her name seemed to momentarily distract him, a chink in his armor. Don't you dare bring her into this, he hissed, his voice laced with a new kind of fury, a desperate edge. Oh, but I am, I said, my voice steady now, because this is about her too, and I'm not going to let you destroy her life and then expect me to just disappear. I opened the door. the cool air of the hallway a welcome respite from the suffocating tension of the office. You might have the money mark, and you might have your layers of protection, but you don't have control over everything, and you definitely don't have control over me anymore. I stepped out into the hallway, leaving him standing there, his face a mask of anger and dawning fear. I didn't look back. I didn't wait for him to react. The elevator ride down felt like an eternity, each floor a release from the oppressive atmosphere of his office. The lobby was empty, the night guard already dozing in his chair. I walked out into the pre-dawn chill. The city lights now seemed less like diamonds and more like distant, indifferent stars. The drive home was a blur. The adrenaline that had sustained me was starting to wane, leaving behind a crushing exhaustion and a profound, aching emptiness. I didn't know if my bluff had worked. I didn't know if I had truly protected Sarah or myself. But I had taken a stand. I had refused to be a victim. I had confronted the monster. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a sliver of agency, a sense of having reclaimed some small part of myself. When I finally pulled up to my apartment building, the sky was beginning to lighten, painting the horizon in hues of pale gray and rose. I walked up the steps, the keys feeling heavy in my hand. The apartment was silent, dark. Sarah was gone. Of course she was.
The life we had shared was over, shattered into a million irreparable pieces. I stood in the entryway, the silence amplifying the ache in my chest. The rage was gone, replaced by a deep, pervasive sadness. But there was also a strange, quiet peace. I had faced the worst, and I had survived. The road ahead was uncertain, treacherous, but for the first time since I discovered the truth, I felt like I could breathe. I just exhaled, a long, slow sigh that felt like the last vestiges of a life I no longer recognized were finally being released.